So it turns out this story is about a sociopath, a woman who should have just so many restraining orders against her. But throughout this story, she finds something even crazier than she is, a little something called love. And also, there's, birds. Apple had this sale where you got a bunch of Alfred Hitchcock movies, something like 15 movies for $20. I've only seen 3 of them, so I figured I'd buy it. I'd seen Psycho, Backdoor, and Vertigo. Rear Window, not Backdoor. That's a different kind of movie. I may review that one next. But I figured we'd start with the birds and a little segment I like to call Better Late Than Never. So I'm not going to do like a scene by scene breakdown, except for the first like 15, 20 minutes, because it's it's something. So our story starts in San Francisco, and there is a suspicious amount of birds flying around. We follow this blonde lady as she walks into this pet store. As she's walking in, this old guy is walking 2 dogs out. And if you know what Alfred Hitchcock looks like, you can tell that that's clearly like he put himself in his own movie. He pulled a little Tarantino cameo there. So after Alfred leaves, we follow this blonde lady into the store. We find out her name is Melanie. And Melanie asks the lady at the counter about some kind of reservation she has at the pet store. The lady says, I gotta go check on that. So she leaves to go to kind of a back room to check on that. And then a mystery man walks in. And he comes up to Melanie and asks what kind of bird he should get for his sister. Now Melanie, again, does not work here. But instead of telling this guy this, she starts just answering his questions. And we'll quickly find out that he knows she doesn't work there, and he also knows who Melanie is. Now, she is the daughter of a newspaper publisher. And this is the 60s, so newspapers were kind of a big deal, so she's kind of like rich and famous. So there's this little flirty thing between them, and then the guy ends up leaving without buying birds. And, it's kind of just a nice little cute flirty thing. But then it gets a little less cute. Now, I'm not saying she's crazy, but she follows this guy outside, watches him get in his car and drive away, and catches his license plate number. She quickly goes back inside the store, writes down the license plate number, and calls somebody at her dad's newspaper so he can look up the license plate with the DMV. And this is the first time this pops up where guys just give her information. I don't know if it's because it's the 60s or because she's pretty, but men just give her massive amounts of information without really asking much of a question. I guess I can understand with this one because he works at her dad's newspaper, but this comes up a lot. And again, not saying she's crazy, but the next day, with the information she got from her newspaper contact, she shows up at the guy's house. We find out his name is Mitch. So she shows up with 2 birds in a cage and a letter addressed to Mitch. We don't find out what the letter says. I'm guessing it's something like, Dear Mitch, want a bone? I think that's how they did love letters back in like the 60s. And maybe there was like a check yes or no situation? Anyway, she leaves the note and the birds outside Mitch's door and walks off. Mitch's neighbor catches her and stops her from leaving. And this is another time where a man just gives her an incredible amount of personal information for somebody else. The neighbor explains that Mitch is not home, is not going to be home for several days. He furthermore explains that Mitch is going to be in this town called Bodega Bay. And if she didn't know where that was, not to worry, because he explains that it's about 2 hours away from San Francisco on the Pacific Coast Highway. So Melanie, and again, not saying she's crazy, but she takes the birds in the cage and the card on a 2-hour drive to this little town called Bodega Bay. Once she gets there, she goes into this general store and asks the guy at the counter about Mitch. This guy is the worst of all the guys. He gives away so much information. So as soon as Melanie starts asking about Mitch, this guy immediately reveals where he lives. Like, literally, he points to his house. Like, yes, he lives there. He lives there with his sister and with his mother. And if you take this road, it will go right to his house. So Melanie goes, well, is there another way to get there? I'm trying to surprise him. Driving 2 hours with these birds isn't enough of a surprise, apparently. So, no worries for this guy. He just says, yeah, you can rent a boat and just go across the bay right to his dock. That'd be a nice surprise. Now, most people would say, wow, that was an excessive amount of information. Thank you for that. Good day, sir. Not Melanie. Instead, Melanie has more questions. Melanie wants to know Mitch's sister's name. So she asks the guy. He doesn't know. But the guy says, well, not to worry. I don't know, but I will give you the address for the girl's teacher so you can go ask the girl's teacher what her name is. And of course, Melanie just gets on in the car, drives on down the road to the teacher's house. She walks up, knocks on the door, and the teacher... This is the first person in this entire movie who seems even relatively concerned that this lady is asking around about this guy. So she's a little concerned, but eventually she gives up the name, and Melanie heads back to town. So Melanie gets the boat and eventually takes it across the bay to Mitch's dock. She gets out with this bird cage and now 2 cards, one to Mitch and one to his sister. So she walks up to the front door and, again, not saying she's crazy, but instead of knocking on the door, she checks it and the door is unlocked because it's the 60s. So she just lets herself in and walks inside, puts the bird cage down and 2 cards, and then eventually stops for just a moment and thinks like, maybe this is too much. So she takes one card, the one she wrote to Mitch, and she takes it back. So she only leaves the birds and this card to a girl that she's never met before, and she goes back down to the dock to get in the boat and starts back across the bay. Now she's almost got away with it, and she's back in the boat, started back to the other side of the bay. But then Mitch arrives at his house. He goes to the front door, goes inside, and quickly, we can see from her point of view, he quickly comes outside, looks around frantically, and then goes back inside. I assumed to get a gun because somebody randomly left birds in your house. But no, he comes outside, he's got binoculars, and he's looking around to see who would have done that. And eventually, he sees Melanie in the boat just off of his dock. And he takes the binoculars down and just smiles and goes like, oh, that crazy girl. What the f***? So you may be saying, hey, this movie is titled The Birds, yet we haven't really talked about any. True story, but as Mitch is going to meet Melanie at the boat, there's a giant seagull that comes down and like bites or scratches Melanie's head and then just flies away. So Mitch helps her clean it off, and as he's cleaning the wound, he invites Melanie to dinner, who of course accepts. What do you know? So Melanie shows up to dinner with Mitch, Mitch's sister, and Mitch's mother. Mitch's sister is ecstatic to meet this lady she's never met before because, she left her birds. It was like a birthday gift. So she's happy. She's happy. Mitch's mother, less so. Mitch's mother is actually incredibly suspicious because Melanie is an incredibly suspicious woman. So now I'm starting to notice kind of a pattern with a few of these Alfred Hitchcock movies. The overbearing, disapproving mother. It was the case with Psycho. There's a bit of a disapproving mother in Psycho. Spoiler alert on that. And then also in this one, the mother does not like Melanie, which in this case, I absolutely agree with her. But I don't know if this is something with Hitchcock. Did he have some issues with his mom? Some other kind of family issues? Maybe he just needs a hug from someone, not his mother. So Melanie is getting to know his family, and while she's doing this, the birds are also getting really, really aggressive. Like there's one that just flies into a window and just dies. And then the next one, the more concerning instance with the birds, is this girl's, the little sister's birthday party. So while they're having this birthday party outside, these birds just start attacking these kids. It's not funny. These birds just start attacking these kids. And so the adults get the kids inside real quick. And so they're like, okay, good, we're safe. But you're not, because the birds tunnel their way through the chimney and into the house, and all of a sudden there's like hundreds of birds in this house. Now I don't know how they did this effect. Again, this is like a '60s, but it looks really great even today. I think it was like maybe like a green screen with the birds, like just birds on a green screen, and then like actors would just pretend to like be dodging and fighting off birds. I don't know how they did it, but it looks great even today. There's another scene after the little the chimney scene where the kids are once again the kids are getting attacked by birds. Again, not funny, but they're running, and this effect doesn't really. I mean, this one hasn't really aged quite as well as some of the other effects. But when the kids are running and the birds are attacking, that one doesn't look quite as good. But the rest of it throughout the entire movie, like the bird attack stuff looks great. So the movie itself is fairly anticlimactic. It just kind of ends. Like the birds are still there, and people are just trying to survive. Overall, it's a good movie. I mean, it's good. It's yeah, I say it's fine. It's good. As far as Hitchcock movies, I would put it below Psycho, and probably in the same area as Rear Window. A little bit better than Vertigo, and it's about a 3 out of 5. Speaking of bird attack movies, if you wanted to see one that was not executed quite as well, and this was just, I think, like 5 or 10 years ago, there's a movie called Birdemic. You can see you can see the trailer. You can see a couple of scenes on YouTube. If you want to check that out, I'd highly recommend it. It's worth it, even if it's just for a laugh.